my people, and welcome back to the Fandom Zone podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, DJ Nik, back in the Fandom Zone this time to discuss some more Loki with my fabulous co-host, amazing friend, and a man who makes the world a better place with his scathing yet witty activity on social media, Mr. Charles Skaggs. Hey Charles, how are you today?
I'm doing just lovely, Nick. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And I'm here to formally place you on suicide watch. Because after the first 3 games of the Stanley Cup Finals, you have my deepest sympathy, sir. Because your Montreal Canadiens, your beloved Habs, are getting their collective behinds handed to them rather soundly by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Curse you, Tampa Bay Lightning!
Yes, exactly. I mean, I have to say, yes. One has to be a little bit realistic and I guess objective. The Tampa Bay Lightning are proving to be the better team right now. We have one more game. Hopefully we can force a game 5 and go from there, because I believe in miracles, Charles. I have to believe in miracles in some form or shape. But I will say it's been very painful to watch. I kind of feel just like Loki did, being kicked in the groin constantly by Sif.
Yes.
That's how I felt. I was like, I'm Loki, and the Tampa Bay Lightning are Lady Sif yelling at me and then kicking me in the groin. And I'm like, I so feel for you, Loki. And plus, I'm watching this at 2 a.m, remember? Right. So this is I'm going to bed like at 5, feeling the pain of being thrashed every other night by these guys. So I'm like, yeah, I'm in my own kind of little time loop here, being tortured, I think, at this point.
Well, that's obviously going to be the meme here. So if anybody at home wants to create that meme just for Nick, where you can have that picture of Loki getting kicked in the groin by Sif, and you could put over Sif's face, you could put Tampa Bay Lightning, and over Loki's face, you could put Montreal Canadiens fans.
Yes, it probably works. You might start something there for the Tampa Bay Lightning social media there, I reckon.
Focus on getting to Game 5. Once you get to 5, then you can worry about getting to 6. And once you get to 6, you worry about Game 7.
That's right, exactly. Now you have to take everything in stride and just, worry about it game to game. So I guess we'll see how it goes. On the plus side, I will send a big shout out to Team Italy, who's doing very well when it comes to Euro Cup. They just made it to the semi-finals in the Euro Cup. They'll be playing Spain. And on the other side, England will be playing Denmark. So I'm hoping for an Italy-England final at Wembley Stadium. That should be definitely worth the watch, I reckon.
I would say so. We were talking about it before we started recording, and that match sounds like a must-watch to me. Because if nothing else, this would be your redemption. The redemption of your soul after having it crushed in the Stanley Cup Finals. But maybe this time this will be the karmic, the universe paying its karmic debt to you by having Italy win in Wembley Stadium, of all places.
Exactly, against the England of all people. So I guess we'll see how it plays out. But things are getting very exciting in that sense, and especially excited today to be discussing this latest episode of Loki with you here at episode 223. We are discussing the 4th episode of Loki, entitled The Nexus Event. This one was written by Eric Martin, who is not the lead singer for Mr. Big, mind you. Even though I was trying to research, I was like, oh, it's not that guy, who has worked on such shows as Rick and Morty and Community. While in the director's chair, of course, we have Kate Herron. So before we actually get to our trivia topics, Charles, as there is a lot to talk about on this episode, I know this episode was huge for a lot of people. Some people say it's the best one so far.
Right.
What are your general thoughts on the Nexus event?
Well, after last week's, shall we say, sort of filler episode with Lamentis, I think this was much more of a return to form for Loki at the TV show. I thought things kind of got back on track because, hey, we started focusing on the central storyline once again, and we get some big reveals in this episode. We get to find what the timekeepers are or perhaps aren't, and we get possibly more of a reveal of the true big bad of the series, and apparently it's not Sylvie, by all appearances. And we get some more questions, and we get a couple of people switching sides in this episode. So there's a lot going on.
Oh, yes.
And not to mention just a little bit of added romance as well, picking up from the events of Lamentis, as our two Lokis, our two star-crossed Lokis, find a way to get closer and in the process trigger some noticeable Nexus events in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's right.
But yeah, I thought it was very well paced. There's a lot going on. We even get a mid-credit scene. We get the first mid-credit scene of this series, and wasn't that an interesting one? And which we will, of course, talk about later in the episode. We'll just tease it there. But yeah, it was great, and I can't wait to find out your reaction to this.
Well, I'm right there with you. I really enjoyed this as well. I kind of compared Lamentis, i.e. episode 3, to being like the palate cleanser. And so we kind of move on to our second course, if you will. This is, my favorite part of the meal where we get the meat. So,
right.
And so
the entree.
Exactly. So then I'm kind of rubbing my hands saying, yay, it's meat time. So I really enjoyed it. There was a little bit of everything in it. And I was really hoping we would get a mid-credit or end-credit scene, and we did. Well, once again, some great actors being introduced here, and we will be counting them down here shortly. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I think we just kind of got back on track, and I was just like, I was constantly, I think if I had done a reaction video like they have on YouTube, it probably would have been great. It was like, no way, what, really, what's happening now? Kind of. Yeah, I promise, folks, I won't do that. I'll save you my terrible expressions that I probably do make while I'm reacting to something.
Oh!
Yes, and throwing stuff around and yelling at my...
just completely over-exaggerating yourself, that kind of thing.
Yes, that's right. So don't worry, folks. There won't be a reaction video anytime soon. But I'm right there with you. And as I said, there's a lot to unpack and a lot to talk about. I think a few theories will probably seep in here and there, as they'll want to do on the Fandom Zone. So we'll see.
Once or twice, yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
And we also had a wonderful cameo in this one. So we have to talk about that as well.
We certainly do. So, speaking of which, guest cast aside from our regular players, we did finally get to see our trio of timekeepers who turn out to be more than what they seem, as Charles was alluding to, but more on that later. In the comics, just to give you a refresh, as mentioned previously, the timekeepers made their comic debut in Thor issue.
Right.
Created by He Who Remains, who was the last director of the TVA, who created them, as no surprise, as overseers of the TVA itself. Also, we get another interesting introduction of another trio, or I guess 4 different characters here on this episode. We have Richard Grant as classic Loki, whom our listeners will probably know from Bram Stoker's Dracula, Logan, Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, and of course, the Doctor Who villain, Walter Simeon, and... for you Whovians out there, a version of the 10th Doctor in Doctor Who and the Curse of the Fatal Death. Because if you've been watching Charles's feed, ladies and gentlemen, you probably would have seen a little meme from Doctor Who and the Curse of the Fatal Death. So
my sort of spoilery, but not spoilery, Richard E. Grant gif, yes, from the Curse of Fatal Death. Written by Stephen Moffat, I might add.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's
right.
And he was also, I also want to mention because, hey, it's Doctor Who, so I'm going to chime in. He was also almost the 9th Doctor in the webcast animated series Scream of the Shalka from 2003, because originally the BBC was going to go ahead and continue Doctor Who with a different 9th Doctor and an animated version, done in... Since remember it's 2003, so they did it in Flash animation. If you remember Flash animation, kids.
Oh yes.
And this was right before they announced that they were bringing the TV series back later in 2003. So Richard E. Grant was cast as this animated 9th Doctor, and so once the announcement came out, it's like, well, I guess that's not canon anymore. Which I kind of feel bad for Richard E. Grant, but then he turned up on proper Doctor Who as Walter Simeon and the Great Intelligence.
Yep.
A classic baddie from the Patrick Troughton era, the human personification of the Great Intelligence. So, and then he was before that also, like you mentioned, in The Curse of the Fatal Death, the Doctor Who comic relief parody sketch for Red Nose Day.
Yeah, exactly. And folks, I would definitely suggest you check it out.
Because it's got because you got a lot of great stars. You got Hugh Grant, Joanna Blumley, Rowan Atkinson as the Doctor,
yes,
and Jonathan Pryce as the Master, which is perfection. So you really need to watch this. It's hysterical, for one thing, and a lot of great cameos, so including Richard E. Grant. So, yeah, I had to mention him. And also he was in Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker recently as well.
Indeed. The man has pretty much been all over the place, so it's great to actually finally get him in the MCU as well. And of course, folks, if you're wondering about the name Classic Loki, he is named of that as, of course, he is sporting the classic costume which the comics version of Loki debuted in 1962's Journey into Mystery.
Right.
So that is the deal with him. We then have Jack Veal as Kid Loki, whom folks will know for the TV show The End of the Effing World and The Corrupted. Kid Loki came about in the comics after the OG Loki died and was reborn as a child whom would actually later join the Young Avengers. So that's something maybe worth keeping an eye out for. And finally, or should I say, finally, I guess we could say, when it comes to the humanoids at least, we have Deobia Operae as boastful Loki. And you may remember Deobia as Rongo in Richard Burton's adaptation of Dumbo. Tim Burton, pardon me, adaptation of Dumbo.
I say Richard Burton is probably dead by that point.
Exactly, yes. I mixed up my Burtons. I said Tim Burton's adaptation of Dumbo. And of course, Gunnar from Pirates of the Caribbean, Stranger Tides. There's nothing really on this version of Loki. I mean, Charles, did you have anything on boastful Loki?
I don't. The only thing I had was just the other movies that the Obia Operae was in. Also, Alien 3, Moulin Rouge, Dredd, the good Judge Dredd film, and he was recently on Game of Thrones. So I'm curious about this one because this one doesn't seem to be, as far as I know, one from the comics.
No, in fact, I was kind of looking at that myself, couldn't really find anything. And of course, I did not forget, folks, a character which surprisingly seems to have taken the interwebs by storm. We get a crocodile wearing Loki's helmet, which seems to have been baptized Croaky. Initially by Charles Skaggs. I think now the interwebbers are following his lead and making it a thing. So yes, we do get Croaky. That would be an interesting one, I reckon. And another new face at the top of this episode is actually Kaylee Fleming as young Sylvie, who Star Wars fans will know as playing young Rey in Star Wars The Force Awakens, and Judith Grimes in The Walking Dead. So it was great to see Kaylee Fleming. I know, Charles, you being a fan of both Star Wars and The Walking Dead, you were probably familiar with Kaylee.
You know, I obviously didn't know her by name, but once, I did some research and I was like, oh, she plays Judith on The Walking Dead these days. So I know exactly who they were talking about. Fantastic little actress. And she was also on Preacher as well.
That's right.
So she's got a bit of a comic book TV background as well.
And it's also great to once again have her in the MCU as well. And when it comes to familiar faces, as we were alluded to earlier, myself and Charles, we get a certain Jaimie Alexander reprising her role as Lady Sif, who of course is part of Loki's loop torture, and more on that later as well.
Right. So, and we haven't seen her since all the way back in 2015. In the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode, Who You Really Are, which may not count anymore as far as MCU canon.
True, and it's curious that they would bring her back in this because that episode, of course, did feature an enchantress. So it makes it's like, is this meant to be, if you will, because she dealt with one enchantress, in inverted commas. Now she's dealing with one who seems to be a composite of the enchantress and Loki. But so I think it was an interesting choice for that. And, of course, always a joy to see Jaimie on screen. So we have 4 topics today. And as it seemed to work well for us last time, Charles, I figured we could once again dissect this episode by highlight moments, if you will.
Okay.
Seeing as we're pretty much familiar with the cast and what have you. And so I figured we could go around this way, too. So first topic.
Well, before we get into first topic, though,
sure.
I have a couple more trivia things I'd like to mention, if I could.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right. So really quickly, because I know we got a lot to talk about. I won't keep you just waiting. But first topic, or first trivia bit I want to mention, the scene where Sif and Loki interact is actually based on Norse mythology legend, where Loki cuts off her hair. And in the legend, this actually puts Thor on a quest that leads to the creation of Mjolnir.
Indeed it does. And in that one, actually, Loki cuts all her hair off. He doesn't just, do a couple of things. She's like, Sif is left literally bald.
Right. It's not just a little clump that she can carry around in her hand. It's completely, like you said, takes all of her hair off.
Yeah.
And there's a nice little Easter egg I wanted to mention.
Mm-hmm.
Ravonna's code name when she was a hunter, as we see when she was capturing Kid Sylvie in this episode, in the flashback at the beginning. If you notice the codename number, it was A23, which was a nod, obviously, to the character's first appearance in the Avengers Volume 1, number 23, which I just happen to have the picture of right behind me, which all of you out there in podcast land cannot see, but Nick can.
Indeed I can.
This very comic.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff.
The first appearance of Kang the Conqueror.
So exactly, it makes you wonder, what is this all alluding to?
I wonder, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, see, Ravonna, Kang, and I can't imagine what this might be connecting to. We'll find out, though.
We certainly will. So, any other
that's all I have.
Topics, things, Charles?
That's all I have. Although I did want to mention, I guess I can mention the song that features in this episode, "If You Really Love Me, Really, Really Love Me," by Brenda Lee, which was a fantastic song choice at the end of this episode. It's actually an English cover of a French song by singer Edith Piaf called "Hymne à l'amour." Love him. So. Yeah, it's. I just thought I'd mention that because if anybody kind of wonders if you've heard the Edith Piaf version, it's like that kind of sounds familiar. Well, that's probably why. It's a cover, only in English.
And always nice to hear Little Miss Dynamite singing because Brenda's very near and dear to my heart. I don't want to go on too long about this, but I actually got the chance to interview Brenda on Whiskey and Cigarettes.
Oh, fantastic.
Lovely, lovely lady. She is literally a Little Miss Dynamite because still now she's a little bit older these days, but she's still so fiery and so dynamic. And it was a joy for me to actually, meet her because folks probably know she's the one who sang Rock Around the Christmas Tree. That's what I mainly.
Yeah, that's where I know her too as well. So that's her big claim to fame here in the United States, or at least her biggest, I should say. But and it's kind of interesting because on YouTube I was noticing that the comments from people who are just now discovering this song for the first time, like you hear, like I was scrolling through the YouTube comments and they're like, I can't believe I'm listening to a song from the 1960s, but I'm loving it, and that kind of thing. So
comments like, I'm here because of Loki.
Right, that kind of thing. So, but they're discovering this song, so if nothing else, it's great because when shows like Loki do things like this, it's getting them to experience music that they would have never looked into any other way. They wouldn't have had a reason, and now they get a little bit of an appreciation for that music that maybe they otherwise wouldn't have had.
And this is why folks like you then go on to create Spotify playlists, like a soundtrack of the TV shows, So I think this would make for a great one as well, Charles, because some of the choices are really good. We got Dark Moon last week. We get this one this week. It seems like they're going for most of the vintage songs, if you will, which I suppose ties in well also with the TBA being very anachronistic. So kind of having this sort of theme, if you will.
Yeah, they could probably draw from all different eras, and consequently that gives a much more diverse soundtrack, and as a result, I think a better soundtrack. Because personally, that my musical tastes are very diverse, so I appreciate music from a lot of different eras, and including songs like this by Brenda Lee. So as far as I'm concerned, the more songs like that, the better.
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you for sure. So moving on here to the task in hand, as they say. As I mentioned, 4 topics today. Our first topic is entitled "Sweet Little Sylvie and the Power of Love." So
that's
basically,
the power of love.
Yes,
break out the Huey Lewis.
Him or Celine Dion, I suppose.
Right. Well, it is the anniversary of Back to the Future, so it makes perfect sense to title it that.
Exactly. So our episode kicks off, of course, with a flashback of the aforementioned young Sylvie, ostensibly in the royal palace of Asgard, playing with her toys when she's grabbed by a familiar Ravonna Renslayer, as Charles was mentioning, in hunter garb, though, as A23. So she takes her to the TVA in order to have her tried and pruned. Yet, being a Loki, Sylvie is actually able to escape as a child, and we find out that she literally grows up by hiding in apocalyptic events. So when we, to get an opening like this, Charles, because we had kind of ended on the cliffhanger of Loki and Sylvie on Lamentis, and we were theorizing how they're going to get out of it. What did you make of this flashback and kind of seeing young Sylvie and possibly getting to learn more about her journey and her relationship with Ravonna?
Well, I thought it was interesting to start with a flashback, after probably making us wait a little bit longer to find out how they get rescued from Lamentis, Loki and Sylvie. But I thought this was a very important one. For one thing, we get to see the events of Sylvie being taken by the Time Variance Authority. So it made sense to me that these to show this flashback, and it was very interesting. And we kind of see that essentially Ravonna is responsible for screwing up Sylvie's life. Here she was, just an innocent little girl playing, and then all of a sudden her entire life gets upended by Ravonna as acting as a hunter for this Time Variance Authority, which by the end of this episode we find out doesn't even really exist. So,
that is very true.
Now the question obviously is, well, did it exist at this point when Ravonna was acting as a hunter, or was this just all a ruse? We don't know yet. We don't know the circumstances, but the point is, it screwed up Sylvie's life, and obviously has turned her into the older woman that she is now, the older goddess, I guess, and it's obviously affected her entire outlook. So the question is, well, you have to wonder, well, what would have Sylvie's life been like had Ravonna not messed with her timeline? Taken her out of that timeline.
You very much do. And I suppose it also gives us confirmation, I guess, that she is a Loki variant.
Right.
Because we actually get that shot of Asgard. I'm thinking that's the Asgardian royal palace from what I gathered.
Something like that, or at least a Asgard. If she's, if she is, as we've possibly speculated, Loki from the multiverse, this might be just another Asgard from that particular universe. So as a result, I think it makes you more sympathetic towards Sylvie, because it gives a lot of credence to her claims up till now, and gives you the impression that Sylvie is not the villain of this story, as she was we first were presented with.
And we, I think, start to believe her more and more about the story that she had told Loki, that everybody's a variant, and that the TVAs are actually the bad. The TVAs are actually the bad guys. And I think, of course, it reinforces our theory that Ravonna Renslayer may actually be one of the main villains in this. And I'm sure we'll discuss that greater length further down the line on this episode. But yeah, I love this, and I thought this young, child Sylvie just did a great job. And I love that already you can see how sort of rebellious she is already, because she's able to kind of escape as a child from the TVA. I think it goes to show you how bad the TVA is when it comes to security, and not being able to kind of take care of a child, because you think you're dealing with maybe hardened criminals or people who are probably more menacing than a child. But I guess maybe it's also credit to Sylvie being so good at just being able to elude everybody. And I think the concept of her almost being a nomad in time is a beautiful one. It's almost like Doctor Who, if you will, because she's basically traveling through time without a fixed point, but simply hiding in these apocalyptic events in order to just escape these guys. And she's been doing this all her adult life. So, I mean, that could be almost a show in itself. Having Sylvie grow up through these various events and the adventures that she encounters. That could be a whole show, I suppose.
We could be getting a spin-off of a spin-off. in this case.
Exactly. I mean, heck, they did the Adventures of Young Hercules. You can do the Adventures of Young Sylvie.
I would watch that in a heartbeat. I would at this point. As long as Sophia Di Martino is part of it, I'm watching that.
I would love to see something like that myself. Plus us both being fans of like Doctor Who and time traveling and everything else.
I'm there.
It would work great.
I'm totally there. Yeah.
So on the other side, of course, we have Sylvia's telling Loki about her past, and and we get this perceived chemistry we had talked about, which seems to very much manifest, even more so in these little looks and gestures, because the two don't actually share a kiss or anything like that, but they kind of give each other these kind of knowing glances and these little touches, and it seems like it's these interactions that create a new timeline branch and thus alert Mobius and the TVA to their location, and so our Lokis are taken into custody. So when it came to the fact of just the two interacting here, Charles, and being able to create a timeline branch just like that, right. What do you think of all that? I mean, I guess it confirmed your thoughts of love is in the air, literally, and more could happen between these two.
Yeah, we talked about it, that, I was noticing these little glances between these two, and there seemed to be chemistry there. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, yeah, that's what we're getting here, because apparently, this is one of the things that is responsible for a Nexus event, and that Nexus event becomes this, that they start expressing these feelings for one another, and you see in TVA headquarters this big spike in the sacred timeline progress, or bar graph, or a time or line graph, I should say. The steady, smooth sacred timeline gets a big bump when these two are showing their feelings. So it's like this big beacon that crosses out through time and space and alerts the Time Variance Authority of their position, and so they're able to rescue them in time. So my question to you: what did you think of that resolution? Were you satisfied with the way they rescued them?
We had I think theorized that would have been maybe one of the outcomes of how they would escape from Lamentis 1 from the destruction, and I was okay with that. What I was blown away by, because it definitely leaves you food for thoughts, that just the fact that they're kind of getting a little bit touchy-feely is spawning this huge sort of branch. And does that mean that it's implying that the relationship will go deeper, and who knows, they might actually have children, or something more might spawn from this? Because the fact that it spiked just like that, because the two were kind of like not even doing anything, in particular.
Right. Just having feelings for one another. So what happens? Yeah. What happens if they have sex? What happens if they have a kid? Yeah. I mean, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria, people, to use a Ghostbusters quote. But yeah, and Mobius is just like, these two are swooning over each other, having this relationship that, of course, the perfect woman for Loki would be a female version of himself.
Who else, right?
Right, who else? Playing up completely to his narcissism in this case, which is something that gets brought up over and over again in this episode.
Exactly, which I think is, and it's also, I think, it shows you another side of Loki as well. Because I don't think we've ever actually seen him be in love with anybody. The only sort of, I think, love he's ever sort of really had, aside from himself, of course, is, I think, the love he had for Frigga. That was the maternal love, the kind of love of a son for a mother in that sense. I think that's the only time he's actually felt love or has loved somebody. And we can see that's very much a whole new world and feeling for him, to the point where he almost has trouble even expressing it, as we will see later on in the episode. So I love that we kind of get this extra side to already a multifaceted character like Loki. So I've always, and it definitely humanizes him more. And we are definitely rooting for him now. And I don't think already.
I'm sure the shippers are definitely rooting for Sylvie and Loki right now.
Yes. And I think already, even though I suppose Loki was already the villain, in inverted commas, you love to hate, now people love him even more because it shows you, I think, what a complete character this is. He's probably one of the best written characters in the MCU at large, even more so now. They've just added depth to I think what was already a fabulous, fabulous character. So, and Tom Hiddleston is amazing.
I was just going to say, we have to credit Tom Hiddleston because he's playing all these different facets of Loki and doing it so well.
Yeah.
And, when it comes to, these new circumstances that Loki has for probably the first time as far as this Marvel Cinematic Universe version of Loki, his first romance ever. And not just, like you said, not a maternal love, for a parent. It's a romantic love. So it's a completely different love. And as a result, Loki isn't really sure what's going on. He's I think partially living, especially when he's talking with Mobius, it feels like he's in this world of denial a little bit, that he can't admit his true feelings.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't really understand his true feelings, I think.
Which really, I think, is wonderful because it really shows you, like, it's almost like, what is this warm feeling I have in my chest? It's like, I've never felt this way before. And so it was kind of cute. I was expecting, like, a Disney song to start, like, right. Loki sing, "What is love? I'm in love." It is.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me.
I could see that rescored as like a classic Disney song, because this is done by Disney after all, so you can have Loki chirping and singing to himself. Right.
But then Loki's heart grew 3 sizes that day.
That's right. Well played, sir. Well played.
Thank you.
And as Charles did a great segue there when it came to bringing in Mobius, let's bring in Mobius, Mobius, and B15. So that takes us to topic number 2, which is titled "Looping in Mobius and B15." So, of course, Loki and Sylvie are separated, obviously, and Mobius is tasked with interrogating Loki, also because it seems he's being forbidden to have any contact with Sylvie whatsoever. Here we have, of course, Loki trying to tell Mobius what he's learned from Sylvie, i.e. that everybody working from the TVA are, in fact, variants plucked from different moments in time and space. Mobius, of course, does not believe him and submits Loki to a rather curious form of torture, where Loki is forced to relive being kicked to the curb, both literally and figuratively, by Lady Sif, because for a joke he cut her hair, which we talked about. And Loki does seem to come out of this torture eventually somewhat changed. So, Charles, what did you make of this scene of, first off, having Jaimie Alexander come back?
Yeah.
And just what did you make of this curious torture, should we say, example of torture by the TVA?
Well, for one thing, it was obviously very great to have Jaimie Alexander back after so long, her being on that NBC series for so long, and then finally getting her back properly, and even though it was, kind of a more of a memory, but still it was a fun cameo, and hopefully that means we haven't seen the last of Jaimie Alexander as Sif. Mm-hmm. So fingers crossed she turns up in Love and Thunder.
Hope so too.
Fingers crossed. But essentially what Loki goes through here is like a Groundhog Day type time loop, and they refer to this as a time cell, which is a very gentle way of phrasing what's going on here, because essentially what it is, it's a hell loop. It's like, take a very horrible moment where someone that Loki knows is essentially, punishing him over and over and over again in this painful loop. And so as a result, and we don't know exactly how long he was in that loop, right?
Yeah.
So, because of the timey-wimey nature, he could have been in there for years, for all we know.
Yeah, because time is basically suspended if you're in the TVA. So
right. So, just all these events keep repeating for him over and over. So, consequently, at some point, even though we don't know specifically what point, he comes to this like, okay, you've kicked me in the crotch long enough. I get it. Okay, I was horrible. I'm sorry. And please forgive me. I realize I did this all for attention because I'm a narcissist. I get it now. So you don't have to keep, kicking me in the groin over and over. But the problem with his loop is, even when he tries to change the outcome, the version of Sif here adjusts and steers it right back on course, no matter what he does.
Yeah.
She always finds a way to pivot it right back onto the whatever sacred timeline. And as a result, it doesn't stop only until Mobius finally shows up and puts an end to it.
Yeah, because he's kind of like, have you had enough?
Yeah.
Are you ready to? Because it's almost like he's using it like, I guess a detective would, try to extort information, and this is his way of doing it.
He's trying to wear him down. Yeah.
Instead of like beating him to a bloody pulp, as you might see some cops do with people to get information.
Right.
This is how he does it.
Yeah, it's essentially what they like to use on cop shows or movies back in the day. They used to refer to it as sweating the person being arrested or whatever or held for information. So consequently, Mobius is sweating Loki. He's trying to get him to crack so that he finally gets through all his bravado and lying and typical Loki BS so that he can finally give them some real information.
Yeah.
But Loki does that. He gives them information, but unfortunately at that point, it's not what the Mobius wants to hear.
Yeah, because in fact at first...
He thinks Loki's lying.
Completely. Yeah, because he immediately spouts out to Mobius, you're a variant, everybody's a variant and everything else, and Mobius is like, yeah, this is Loki as usual.
Soylent Green is people.
Yeah, and I think it is... And Loki does, for once in his life, actually tell the truth. But it's almost like the boy who cried wolf story. He's lied so much, nobody's going to believe him, even when he tells the truth. So it's almost that situation. And because obviously he's like, everybody's a variant, and Mobius won't have any of it. So he puts him through the ringer. But I think this also does something to Loki as well, because seeing the various... different tacks he takes when it comes to this repeated version of Sif, it almost seems like he's starting to almost mend his ways. It's almost cathartic for him of, maybe I am as bad as people say I am, and maybe I should change my ways. It's almost like, I guess, kind of like almost very Dickensian, like with Scrooge being visited by the three ghosts, saying, I will change my ways, I will reform. And I suppose that's what, at the end of the day, also prison is supposed to be. Prison is supposed to correct you, not punish you. That is supposed to be the goal. That's not
rehabilitate you, yes.
That's right. That's what it's supposed to do. But then, unfortunately, very grim and rough stories happen in prison, which shouldn't happen. But,
tell me, Mobius, what day is it? Why, it's Christmas Day, Loki.
Exactly.
Christmas Day. I haven't missed it.
Yeah, I could see him like rushing out, opening the window. You there? What day is it today?
So now we need like the Patrick Stewart Loki to.
I love that. I absolutely love... Hey, Richard E. Grant, I suppose, could probably carry that off in some form.
Well, that's one of my favorite Christmas Carol versions. This is the one that Patrick Stewart did as a version, I believe, for TNT here in the United States. If you haven't seen Patrick Stewart's Christmas Carol, you really should. It's really good. He's fantastic.
I'm right there with you, and and obviously Patrick Stewart carries it off so well.
It's Patrick Stewart. Come on, you're gonna love it. But
exactly.
But one of the things I found really interesting about all this was this is the first real friction since their first meeting between Mobius and Loki that we've seen, because they developed this kind of friendship, but now Mobius is feeling pretty burned at this point. He doesn't trust Loki, so that even when Loki's telling the truth, Mobius just naturally assumes, well, he's lying to me. You're being the cockroach, as he likes to refer to it. And he's feeling a little bitter and I think a little hurt about it.
Yeah, because I thought we were friends.
Right.
And I have to kind of say to Mobius, dude, is this what you call friends? Because either you've never had a friend in your life, or it's like, just because if you've established a connection just like that, doesn't mean you're going out for beers anytime soon. I mean, or Mobius is investing more into it than Loki is.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know what's going on there. Maybe Mobius has a little feelings for Loki. Who knows? But maybe that could be another Nexus event for all we know. But this frustration you feel on Mobius's face, every time he feels burned by Loki. And I don't think that was an act. I think he genuinely felt hurt and betrayed. So, when Loki tries to drop this truth bomb on him, he's not receptive to it at all. But it does kind of play into the back of his subconscious, so that consequently, this is what triggers him asking questions of Ravonna.
Exactly.
Because that little bit from Loki combined with her refusal to let him interrogate Sylvie.
And not to mention, or even see C20 either,
C20,
or know more about C20.
Right, exactly. So he's like, something's not adding up here. And eventually, it does click. And like, he even has to go back to Loki and say, okay, you were right about this. It's something's up here. Something's wrong here.
That's right.
And we need to go free Sylvie.
Yeah, because in fact, at that moment, after they've had a little talk, and Mobius does his little mind tricks as well, because kind of like making him think that Sylvie's dead, just to see the reaction, which is so cop show. These are trying to catch people in a lie, or trying to see how they'll react to something, to tell where they're lying to or not. And it's like, oh yes, Sylvie died, and you can see Loki's trying to almost hold it together. He's like, oh, she was just a pawn, because he says she was working for him, because obviously he's not going to be the guy who's going to say, I was working for her, or it was her plan. But Mobius, of course, catches that brief sort of glimmer in Loki's eyes, almost when he's about to almost cry. It's like, so you do have feelings for her.
Right.
So that's when the penny drops. And I think that's when, obviously, Mobius starts maybe also turning around a little bit more on maybe Loki is onto something. And like you mentioned, Charles, he already had those doubts about C20, who he had no access to, and he was told was pruned because she was making no sense. She was totally, she seemed to totally have lost her mind.
Well, yeah, the spin that Ravonna gives him is somehow Sylvie messed with C20's mind and really, damaged her beyond repair. So, we didn't want to risk the same thing happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
So consequently, it's, doing it for your own good. Like, we're protecting, we're keeping her away from you so she doesn't affect you and that kind of thing. So, but obviously this turns out to be a complete BS story. It's completely false. And we finally get, the reveal here about what's really going on with Ravonna. She's more than she appears, and I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. I told you to pay attention to her.
We certainly did, and which actually, second part, if you will, of this topic, in fact, Charles, we get that great scene where Mobius is starting to be more convinced about something being up, and we get that wonderful office scene between Mobius and Ravonna, where he keeps trying to prod her for stuff, and she keeps staying super tight-lipped, and he's asking, what about yeah, exactly, what's with the timekeepers, and she won't tell him anything. What's with C20? She won't tell him anything. But before, obviously, once the whole thing is over, Mobius does take something from the office, or should we say from Ravonna's office, and gets to find out a little bit more about this. But before we actually get to that point, that's the phone.
Yeah, exactly. I've got Ravonna's phone.
And before we actually get to that, Charles, what did you make of that particular office scene and Ravonna Renslayer in this?
Well, I thought it was a very interesting scene because this dynamic that now Mobius is suspicious of Ravonna. As far as Ravonna is concerned, Mobius is still on her side. So she's just trying to placate him. Yes, she tries to dissuade his questions and dismiss them and say, oh, look, there's nothing to, it's the whole nothing to see here. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you with him? And so he gets to, she has this fondness for her artifacts.
Yeah. So
this is where he makes the move as like, oh, hey, isn't that a new sword or something? Where are you going to put that? And, are you going to put it over there? So, of course, he gets her attention to focus on the other side of the room. And while her head is turned away, he goes through and grabs her pad.
Yeah.
And hopes that he doesn't get caught in the process. But obviously it shows that, yes, he is suspicious of her enough to, actively move against her at this point. And so he gets out of there as quickly as he can and then goes through the trouble. He scrolls through her pad and realizes that Loki was right all along. Something's up here.
because we get that wonderful kind of old school video. It always reminds me of when, you had those little video game sequences of like 8-bit video games when he's kind of opening up her little pad and watching this interrogation, if you will, of C20. And I have to say kudos to the direction and the cinematography, because I love that kind of old school video game style myself. It's always kind of cool to see that whole little animation of C20 play into the whole thing, and seeing that something is literally up, and it was heartbreaking even to see what happened to C20, that she will ostensibly get pruned because she knows too much, or she's found out the truth.
Well, C20 also mentions in that video that says that everyone's a variant, and so Ravonna quickly shuts down that video, but still kept that footage. And so essentially incriminating herself. She didn't just erase it. You have to wonder why she didn't erase it. Maybe she was going to do it later. I don't know. Or maybe Mobius went to her trash section on the pad and restored it. Who knows? She didn't do the full delete. But as a result, it's right there. So essentially, it's C20 saying the exact same thing that Loki is saying.
So it basically confirms his Loki's story.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to show us more and more that Ravonna Renslayer may actually be a total psychopath, because she collects trophies, if you will, like a psychopath would, from their victims, and kind of displays them. She films these kind of things.
We don't know what happened to the people where she got these trophies from, do we?
That's right.
They could be dead. They could be, like you said, they could be, trophies from her victims. All these people could be dead, and she just took their stuff.
And she's happily displaying. That's why I'm like, she's kind of a little bit of a psychopath. Not to mention, if she's filming this stuff, either she's rewatching it later with relish, kind of just to get the rush again, like a serial killer would, of like, oh, I did this and everything else, and munching on popcorn.
Popcorn time.
Let's watch the C21 in super slow motion this time.
Let me put that on the ultra high def. I really want to appreciate this. Yes.
Yes. So it really shows that.
It could be. I mean, we don't know the full story yet, but something's going on there. Or maybe, as we speculated, maybe she's kind of kicking back with Kang in the time crib and, throwing this up on the big screen at home. And they get a little, turned on by it. Who knows?
I can imagine like the roaring fire, and the bearskin rug, and watching these terrible videos.
Right.
So
nothing says aphrodisiac like, I guess, having interrogation and getting rid of someone who is threatening to expose what you're really up to, I guess.
So I just think that it really shows also the acting prowess of these people, because we'd had our suspicions about Ravonna, and here it really confirms everything. Just the way she's so evasive. It was like, you're not telling the whole story. We know there's more to this. And on the other side of the coin, we have Sylvie in her cell continuing her mission of wanting to expose the TVA. And though it seems at first she does seem to heed her, Hunter B-15 at first is like, I don't want to hear it. Then she does want to find out more. So she's able to gain access to Sylvie's cell, and they go back to that apocalyptic event in Oklahoma outside the Roxcart store, and Sylvie and her have a little talk and share some memories. Granted, we don't get to see
memories.
I almost thought of Cats playing that moment of midnight, not a sun. Memory from Cats.
My wife Lori would love you for that, by the way.
Well, I mean, I'm a big fan of Andrew Lloyd Webber. What can I say? So there you go. But yeah, that said, what did you make of that moment where B-15 ostensibly comes over to the dark side, or the Loki side, if you will, and this exchange between Sylvie and B-15?
Well, just like what's happening with Mobius, Hunter B-15 also goes through her own side switch here. She flips. And credit to Wunmi Masako, because she plays it so tragically, understandably, because after getting that little glimpse of a memory that, the first time they went to the Rocks Cart, apocalyptic timeline, with the hurricane and all that Hunter B-15 was suspicious of what's going on, so she has questions for Sylvie. So she takes a risk, which is up till now, very out of character, because the character we had been presented with, a very loyal, firm believer in what the TVA is selling, and now she's having doubts, and so she, it's not really adding up. And so she's going by almost like instinct here. She kind of feels that something's off, something's wrong. So she takes a leap and frees Sylvie, taking her back to that Rocks Cart event. And Sylvie gives her more of her memories back. And we don't know exactly what her memories were, but it's something that it obviously affected her greatly.
She was like, I was happy.
She cries. Yeah, exactly. She was crying and talking, it seemed like it was a very happy memory. And so as this rain is pouring down, so it's shot beautifully.
Oh, yes. And you have to have rain, right?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, the rain covers the tears. So, it's very symbolic of the tears, especially if you're a Blade Runner fan, tears in the rain, I'll just point out. But, nice. Yeah, thank you. So she's asking Sylvie at this point, what now? And it's here, that presumably Sylvie explained more of what's going on and the truth of what has been being kept from Hunter B-15, so that later she actively moves against the Ravonna and the TVA.
That's right. And I think it really, like you mentioned, shows great acting on behalf of, of course, B-15, because the fact that we don't see the images, so we can only imagine, and it's just so well portrayed through her expressions.
I think it's almost better that we didn't see them.
That we kind of have to make up our own story.
We leave it to our imagination.
And I think also, too, of course, her wonderful acting as well, because just the fact she's like, I was happy. It's almost like maybe she's not known happiness since then, because, as you mentioned, we always see as this kind of gruff, rough, kind of almost literally military.
Yeah.
Where it's all about the mission, it's all about serving the TVA, protect and serve, literally. So it's very much she almost has that very sort of military mind. And it's like she hasn't known anything since then, or doesn't remember anything since then. Yeah. And so it also shows that, she was happy, and you wonder whether she had a family or what else it could be. And yeah, as you said, it was brilliantly shot. But obviously what gives it all away afterwards is because Sylvie doesn't have time to dry her hair. So it's like, where were you? How did your hair get wet?
Magic.
Exactly. I just wanted to have a shower implanted in my cells. So I thought I would wash my hair before going to see the timekeepers.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, see, it makes me even more frustrated that HBO has canceled Lovecraft Country, because now we don't get to get more of Wunmi Masako on that show. But yeah, it was very interesting because Hunter B-15 we thought was just this very one-note character. And this character is getting depth, and we realize there's more going on, and it drives the story forward because it adds more to the Sylvie's accusations that these people are really variants who were taken out of their lives, just like she was. And so, yeah, it's almost like this is becoming a revolution now.
Exactly, it is very much that kind of revolutionary.
It was originally just Sylvie, then it became Sylvie and Loki, and now it's become Sylvie, Loki, Mobius, and Hunter B-15. This resistance.
But however, B-15 is able to play her part well and not show anything, because of course she ends up going to see the timekeepers along with Loki and Sylvie. But we do get Mobius getting pruned, because Ravonna finds out that he's taken her tablet, and also I guess what kind of gave it away was the fact he only had one drink. Because she was like, he seems to be in a rush to get out of here. Because usually you have more than one drink. What is this kind of thing? And he like plays it off saying, oh, I'm tired and everything else, and I've got stuff to do. And of course they corner him and he gets pruned. What was your reaction to that, Charles? Because at this point, we don't know where people go when they get pruned. We ostensibly believe they die.
Well, we worried about Loki, obviously, at the very end, but we get a reveal that, okay, he's okay. Mm-hmm. So my question, initially is like, once I saw the act, it's like, oh no, they killed Mobius, you bastards. But
yeah, because you think that's it for Owen Wilson. We won't see Owen Wilson for the rest of the show.
But
at that point,
yeah. But then once we get the reveal that Loki's not pruned after all, in the mid-credit scene, mm-hmm. we find that he just went somewhere else. So now we have to wonder: did Mobius go somewhere else, or is he truly dead, or sent back to his original timeline? We don't know yet.
But were you shocked by that choice? I mean, I know you'd watched Game of Thrones, mm-hmm. where big characters get killed off at the drop of a hat. But I mean, were you surprised? I mean, were you like, oh, wow, they're killing off Owen Wilson. He's only been in 4 episodes out of 6. Or in the back of your mind at the time, before the reveal, you thought
3 episodes because he wasn't in the Lamentis episode.
Very true.
So
what do you think of that? When we're like, oh, this is it for Owen Wilson?
There's that initial belief. And then the reason kind of takes over because you kind of second guess yourself. Initially you're like, oh, wow, they killed Mobius. And then you start thinking about it later on. You're like, well, maybe he's not dead. Maybe he's alive just somewhere else like Loki was. But initially, it was a bit shocking to me. How about you?
I was kind of like, a lot of people in Game of Thrones at the time, even though I've watched like 1 episode, but I know the reactions were like, they didn't just kill this person. So that's why I said I should make a reaction video for YouTube, because when that happened, it was almost like going back to watching the playoffs. It's almost like the Lightning have scored yet another goal. You're like, no! Throwing the remote and stuff, going, it's over. We're dead. That's it. There's
game over, man. Game over.
Yes. There's no more happiness in this world. So
I don't want to live in this world anymore.
I was genuinely shocked, because I thought to myself, you get somebody like with the star power of Owen Wilson, and this is what you do. So are you really pulling a Game of Thrones move and killing him off like you did with Sean Bean? It's like, wow.
I'm skeptical. I don't think he's dead.
I am too. I mean, I'm too at this point after the review. I'm like, oh, so maybe the folks who get pruned don't actually die. They might get sent somewhere. So it's curious. But I definitely wanted to kind of point out, because I'm sure folks at the time were probably shocked to see a big character and a big actor like
maybe that'll be one of the after credits or something in episode 6, where we see Owen Wilson on a jet ski in the 90s.
I would love that. That would be it would make me incredibly happy.
Yeah.
So, anything else that you want to possibly add about this particular part of the episode, Charles?
No, I think we're good.
Alrighty.
Let's move on.
So moving right along, we get to topic number 3, truth about the timekeepers. So after Mobius ostensibly, it seems like tragically, gets pruned and killed, Loki and Sylvie are taken by Ravonna to the timekeepers, whom we finally get to see. I'm sure a lot of folks like myself were super excited. I was rubbing my hands together going, ooh, this is going to be good. We finally get to see these timekeepers. And, because we've heard so much about them, they've been teasing them. So we find out they're not exactly what they seem, as after a skirmish, Sylvie actually beheads one of the timekeepers, which turns out to be an android. And before more answers can be given, and Loki can seemingly confess his feelings to Sylvie, he gets pruned. So, starting... Exactly. What? That's right. Epic fail moment there for Loki once again. He got killed at the beginning of Infinity War. He gets killed in his own show before episode 6, apparently. So, Charles, first off, looking at the timekeepers, what did you make of these 3 androids and, just the way they looked? And what I'm sure you were excited to finally see them.
Well, I thought it was neat, and I appreciated it. I love that, their set. The their chamber or whatever.
It's kind of like throne room almost.
Yeah, exactly. It's obviously very elaborate, very ornate. Like, oh, we are these three mega powerful beings, and you will bow and worship us. That kind of thing. That kind of vibe. So, but it's all a ruse. It's all like man behind the curtain moment here. We find out that these. And this is something we've been suspicious of. We've been wondering, like, well, does the TVA or these timekeepers, do they really exist after all? Because Ravonna was being so evasive about, hey, you guys, like, only I can talk to the timekeepers. And now here we are. We finally get to see them, but ultimately they're exposed as being complete frauds. It's all like they're just simple robots that were there to look like timekeepers and nothing more. They're all facades. They're there for show. And this is where we see also, Ravonna revealing herself behind the curtain, because it really comes out now that she knows what's really going on here. She's behind it all, or at least helping to be behind it all. And whether she's working with someone else, maybe with a 4-letter word name that begins with K, ends in G, and has "and" in the middle, we'll find out.
We certainly will. And what I thought was curious is one of the three looks rather like Kang, doesn't he? Because he's got kind of the blue face.
A little bit.
And I thought to myself, I wonder whether that was almost a nod to Kang himself, because almost like the kind of almost purplish helmet thing going on and the blue face and stuff. So I thought to myself, maybe this is almost modeled on who is actually pulling the strings. I love that scene, and it seems like Disney really likes, or Marvel Studios really likes, to constantly tribute to the Wizard of Oz, because this was yet another Wizard of Oz moment. We'd had it with WandaVision, we'd had it in other situations, and once again here as well, this is very much that moment of the man behind the curtain, or in this case, woman behind the curtain, I suppose. But I loved it. I was so excited because I'm really looking forward to seeing these timekeepers and what they were all about, and finally to confirm what you and I have been talking about of it's Ravonna all along, or is there more to it? So I was like,
Ravonna all along.
So I was satisfied with that, but I also liked the whole concept of that, and then of course, as I said, we have Loki and Sylvie. That almost sort of Jack Rose moment from Titanic, where he's like, there's the, he wants to say that he loves her, but he's unable to, because almost like the child who doesn't realize how to grasp the concept of love. Right. And he gets pruned similarly to how he killed Phil Coulson in Avengers, right from the back.
Great comparison. That is a great, something was gnawing at me about that, and you just phrased that perfectly. Yes. It was a direct homage to that. I absolutely agree with you, sir. Well spotted.
Well, thank you.
Well spotted.
Well, I'm glad that you feel that way too. But
yeah.
And that sort of moment, shall we say, we have Loki for the first time almost being insecure with his feelings. What do you think of that kind of exchange there between Loki and Sylvie? And he's trying to tell her he loves her, but she doesn't,
Yeah, I mean, it was such a strong moment. Here he is, he's fumbling for words, trying to, express what he feels, but he's never had to do that before, so he doesn't quite know how to do it. And just when you think something's going to come out of his mouth, oh, there it is, right in the back. And and he gets taken out of back. He gets pruned, and so it's just like, okay, that's it. I'm sure the shippers were going nuts because here it is, this big moment. It almost looked like they were about to kiss, and it was one of those like will you just shut up and kiss her kind of moment, but. But that didn't happen, and then he gets pruned, and so I'm sure the shippers were out of their minds, going like, "Well, how could you do this? No!" And and you feel bad. And Sylvie makes this very interesting decision at this point, because you would think she would go like, "Okay, that's it. You just pruned my guy, and now I'm going to do the same to you," but she doesn't.
Exactly.
Instead opts to like, hey, you're going to tell me everything. So the question is, what does she tell her?
Exactly, because that was actually another thing I was wondering about is because she's been, constantly wondering why Ravonna did what she did to her from the get-go when she was a child, because apparently the reason why she was, going to spawn some Nexus event.
Yeah.
And Ravonna keeps telling her, "Oh, I don't remember," or
she has a sly smile on her face when she says it. So she basically says, "Oh, I don't remember." And she says it in a way like she remembers. She knows exactly why she did it, but she's not telling Sylvie.
That's right. I mean, did you have any theories or thoughts on what this Nexus event could be?
I don't. I really don't, because it could be just about anything. Remember, all we were presented with, and this is why they did this flashback at the beginning, I think, of this episode, was to tee this up for this moment right here. Because at the beginning, Ravonna comes in, takes young Sylvie out of her timeline. We don't know why, because Sylvie was just sitting there very innocently playing. She's a kid. What is she going to do? So it had to be something external toward that. Something that was, for whatever reason, she was critical to being kept in that timeline. But because of, for whatever reason, whatever goal of Ravonna's and possibly that Kang guy, they had to change things. So the question is, we don't know. This is what Sylvie's trying to find out. Why did you do this? That's the big question here. So no, I don't, unless you have any theories.
Well, my only other thought was possibly, is this almost like we have to kill Hitler before he grows up and becomes a dictator? Almost like, because maybe. It makes you wonder because, because a lot of people think, saying, even Doctor Who has kind of questioned this, is what would happen if you went back in time and killed Hitler when he was a baby?
Right.
Would World War II been averted? Would Nazism not come about? And this whole thing. So you almost wonder whether, had she been left to do her thing, would Sylvia have
right
rest of the timeline, or brought about apocalyptic events because of it? And maybe it was the version in which she became ruler of Asgard and maybe created huge wars and what have you, rather than Thor, because we don't even know what role she played within the Asgardian court, whether she was the adopted daughter of Odin and Frigga, or whether she was a courtier. We don't know at this point.
So what is your feeling? Do you think it's something noble, the intention here to take her out of that timeline? Because at this point, I gotta personally think given Ravonna of who she is in the comics, it makes me very suspicious of her motives. So I'm inclined to think it was something good that they didn't want to happen.
I have my thought was, because I guess I was speculating on the possibility of kill them in the crib before they do something terrible.
Right.
In her eyes, because it could be that in this timeline or in Sylvie's timeline, she maybe actually defeats Kang or somebody else with their big plan.
Exactly.
It's get them when they're a baby so that you can carry on with your nefarious schemes, and you won't, everything you want to come to fruition will come to fruition.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's going to be something, yes, I agree, that's something that benefits Kang is why.
For sure.
Now, what was it? We don't know. But that's I think that's the main, at least at this moment in time here on the podcast, this is probably the best reason for why she did what she did.
And so the
best theory.
So at this point, are you going to stick with the fact that, with the idea that the person behind all this is actually Kang? Or, because there have been other theories, I've noticed on the interweb, some say it's other Lokis, doing something and don't want the other, don't want this variant to come about. There's been so many different versions of who is working, should we say, in consort with Ravonna.
Right.
Are you sticking with the Kang theory?
Yeah, especially after the mid-credit scene that we got, where the other Lokis are now with Loki, who, as far as the TVA or as far as Ravonna is concerned, is maybe pruned, but apparently was rescued perhaps by the other Lokis.
Yeah.
So I'm inclined to think that, no, I think it's Ravonna and Kang are behind this.
Okay.
So that's I don't think it's just Kang. I think it's Ravonna working with Kang. She's all in on this. I don't think she's being manipulated here.
Oh, me either. And I'm also going to stick with the Kang theory, and I guess they might prove us wrong. It's the postman or the mailman or whatever. So,
it's Mephisto.
Or what if it's the bumbling secretary that we saw in episode 1? You know, he's like, I am the one behind it all. You know? Could be, you know. I mean, I don't know.
That guy who was taking, like, here, sign everything.
Yes,
that
the
guy.
MCU version. Yeah, the MCU version of Gary, basically.
There you go. Yeah, that guy.
From Legends of Tomorrow. But no. So I'm right there with you. I'm going to also stick with the theory of Kang. I guess we'll see once episode 6 rolls around if we are right, or heck, we might even find out more in episode 5. Speaking of which, though, and that mid-credits scene, we did get that, so I think we should definitely talk about that, and that's topic number 4. But before we go into that, Charles, anything else you wanted to mention, to say or mention about this previous topic, you know, be it Kang, be it Ravonna, or anything else before we move forward?
No, I think we covered it all. I think we're good.
Okay, great. So topic number 4, there is a Loki for everyone. And as we have 2 episodes of this show to go, we do get this fabulous mid-credit scene where we find that rather than just having died, Loki is sent to, in my eyes, some sort of post-apocalyptic version of maybe New York City. As we can see, Avengers Tower in the background, destroyed, of course, and he is given the "come with me if you want to live" speech by the 3 or 4 Lokis, right. Classic Loki, Kid Loki, Boastful Loki, and Croaky. We're going to refer to him as Croaky, I think, on the podcast.
Yes.
So, Charles, what was your reaction to this reveal, and you know, what are your thoughts on these 4 Lokis?
Well, obviously they were up all night to get Loki, I guess. We're up all night to get Loki.
Nice.
We're up all night to get Loki. So
we miss you, Daft Punk. We really do.
Yes, we do. But
rest in peace. Sure.
Right. But this was a fun reveal. This was a big one. We knew that Richard E. Grant was cast for this show, but we didn't know his role. And here we are, and I just smiled because, you know, seeing the 4 of them. Okay, this one Loki, this, you know, boastful Loki we don't know about. Okay, Kid Loki, that was great because, you know, someone like, you know, us who have read Marvel Comics, we're familiar with that Kid Loki from Kieran Gillen's run in Journey to Mystery and also Young Avengers. So that was great to see. The crocodile with a little Loki helmet, which was adorable, by the way. So points there, Croaky.
Yeah, we love you, Croaky.
We don't know what, you know, he's not from the comics, but it's a funny idea. And then to see Richard E. Grant dressed in, of all things, the classic comics version of Loki's costume. So consequently, it's almost like, you know, that the Halloween episode of WandaVision, where you had the Vision and the Scarlet Witch dressed in their comics accurate but looking seriously cheesy versions of their costumes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what this looks like here. They did the same thing for what is termed here classic Loki. So what this is the original look of Loki that was designed by Jack Kirby and done in the original Journey to Mystery comics where Thor was introduced in the Marvel universe, and then later in the Avengers, because remember in the Avengers comics, Loki was the reason the Avengers formed, which is something that gets brought up in this series in episode 1. So it was just a wonderful nod. I mean, just, you know, he's got the big horned helmet and a spandex version of that green and yellow costume. Personally, I would have liked to see the Walt Simonson version of that costume because I like that design better.
Yeah.
And I'm a big Walt Simonson fan of his Thor run. I have the omnibus right over there of the entire run. So I'm a big fan of that. That's the one I would have liked to have seen, but can't go wrong with the original Jack Kirby design for Loki. as far as I'm
Oh,
concerned.
you
How about you?
certainly can't.
Did you smile at that? Because I know I did.
I was so happy, and I'm so glad you brought up that WandaVision example, because I went there right there myself, and I was so happy you brought it up, because like it seems like this is how they're going to call back the classic costumes, and it's a really fun way to call back the classic costumes.
Yeah.
And you know, even though it looks completely ridiculous, Richard E. Grant is able to pull it off.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks silly, but he looks somewhat dignified in it anyway. It's like, I'm attending this kid's party as Loki, so they're going to dress me up like this. But he looks good in it.
Well, he's really good at he's really good at comedy, Richard E. Grant.
Yes.
And, you know, he's not afraid to not take himself seriously.
That's right.
Which is great. You know, I really respect actors that are okay looking silly. And so, you know, like they're comfortable with it. They know, like they embrace it. I really appreciate actors that embrace the campiness and the silliness from time to time.
Yeah, and folks, if you have, you know, not familiar with Richard E. Grant and you hear him speak, he has this very polished, theatrical, almost Shakespearean British accent.
Right.
And I'm sure the guy has probably done Shakespeare in his career, because he sounds like a guy who probably worked with the Royal Shakespeare Company, because he's got that kind of gravitas, I think.
But he also did a Doctor Who parody sketch, like we talked about, The Curse of Fatal Death.
That's right.
So he's not afraid to take himself not seriously. So it's a lot of fun, and I can't wait to have him bantering off Tom Hiddleston's Loki next episode.
Oh, it's going to be...
I'm going to be there with a bag of popcorn, just like Ravonna and Kang in the bedroom, you know, just kicking back, watching that, going, this is fantastic.
Yes, exactly. Wednesday can't come around soon enough, for sure.
Yes.
And
What about you?
I think it's also maybe another callback to that famous scene in Avengers, because you have the Avengers looking down at Loki, kind of like when he's about to say, "I'll have that drink now." Here, it's almost like the same kind of shot with the four Lokis looking down at him, because he's like, "Is this hell?" You know, and they're kind of looking down at him. So it's almost that kind of shot repeated, and I'm feeling Kate Herron was probably going for that, of like, let's homage that same kind of thing. I'm just sort of wondering where we are, because it's either like some sort of place where the rejects go. It's like the reject bin, if you will, where you kind of find that...
These are the variants that have been pruned and kicked to the curb.
Yeah, it's those dolls that nobody wants, or those kind of DVDs that are like $2, because it's like Creature from the Black Lagoon 22 and...
The Island of Misfit Lokis.
Yes. And you wonder whether there's a place like this for everybody, because we were speculating about where did Mobius go to, or where's everybody else gone to who's been pruned. And also at the same point, you wonder whether it is another apocalyptic version of something, because it made me think of New York City because of the fact we see Avengers Tower in the background. So it's like, where are they? It's almost like, as I said, it's very much... what would have happened had the invasion been successful in the Battle of New York, and this is what's happened, and this is like the fallout of that.
Right.
I mean, I'm just... because it seems like the first Avengers film is being homaged a lot in this series, so I wonder whether there might be a callback to the first Avengers in that sense, and what these guys will get up to, because they tell him, literally, come with us if you want to live, if you will. So...
yeah. Well, the variants have been hiding out in... you know, we know as Sylvie... she figured out a way that the variants, you know, to hide it being a variant, you hide in apocalypses. So presumably these other Lokis figured out the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. But part of me is like, okay, well, there are all these different Lokis, and, you know, some of the, like, we have one that's actually a crocodile. So are we dealing with the multiverse here? Are they hiding out perhaps on another Earth? One where the Avengers failed to stop Loki, perhaps.
That could very well be, and that's why.
And the Earth was overrun by the Chitauri.
That's why I was kind of thinking. It's almost like that what if moment, and I think it's a great thing to do, because of course, you know, we keep talking about the fact of this almost being a Waldron creation when it comes to the series, who will be writing Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So. I'm sure this film is heavily tied into that film. Yeah. So I'm right there with you. This could be a different Earth. They could have been transported to a different Earth or a different reality. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from here, and I think we'll be curious to see, what the whole deal is. I also was wondering whether a lot of folks on this who have written episodes for this have been writers on Rick and Morty.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an episode in Rick and Morty where you get all these different Ricks talking to Morty.
Yes.
So,
like a council of Ricks. Yes.
So you wonder whether which was of course stolen, if you will, borrowed, whatever, from a Marvel story, which was the Council of Reeds, where you have the various Reed Richardses. So I wonder whether that's almost a repeat, almost of that Rick and Morty episode, where you have all these versions of Loki.
Yes, I think that might be what's going on here, or that they either rescued this Loki, or it just happened to be that's where they're all sent. We don't know yet, but I'd like to think that maybe they rescued him for a reason.
I think so too, because they evidently want to help him. So
right.
There must be a reason to this. So I guess we'll have to see what happens when episode 5 rolls around. And so any final thoughts on, or maybe even theories, before we get to our favorite quotes, Charles?
No, I think we've thrown out a lot of theories already. So I think we're good, unless you had anything. I don't have anything more.
I'm just really sort of super excited for Wednesday and just waiting to see where it goes from here, because it's going
to be, if nothing else, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And I love that just like their films, the MCU TV shows are all very different one from another, because this is not, WandaVision is its own thing, Falcon and Winter Soldier is its own thing, and this is its own thing. I love how diverse it is. It's not a cookie cutter thing. I mean, I know folks have kind of accused, or should say been critical of the MCU films of being very cookie cutter and
formulaic.
Being very sort of formulaic, exactly. So they're definitely not doing that, and they're giving, the people the chance to just go nuts and just have
be creative. Hey, what a concept!
Yeah, exactly.
Have fun
on TV, create creativity on TV. Really? Wow. Exactly. So, favorite quotes then, Charles? Did you have any particular favorite quotes from this episode?
Let's see. So, I'll start off with Sylvie talking to Loki, where she says, "Do you think what makes a Loki is the fact that we're destined to lose?" And Loki replies, "No, we may lose, sometimes painfully, but we don't die. We survive."
I like that.
Yeah, so I thought that was a great quote. Let's see. Loki with Mobius saying, of all the liars in this place, and there are a great many, you're the biggest. And Mobius replies, "Why? Because I lied about your girlfriend?" Loki replies, "Oh no, that I can respect. I mean, the lies you tell yourself."
Ooh.
Yeah.
Burn. Exactly.
Yeah. And then Mobius with Loki talking about Sylvie. "You like her. Does she like you?" And Loki says, "Was she pruned?" Mobius replies, "No wonder you have no clue what caused the Nexus Event on Lamentis. Both of you are just swooning over each other." And Loki's like, "Mobius, tell me the truth." Mobius replies, "It's the apocalypse. Two variants of the same being. Especially you forming this kind of sick, twisted, romantic relationship. That's pure chaos. That could break reality. It's breaking my reality right now. What an incredible seismic narcissist. You fell for yourself."
Which is what we've been speculating kind of all along, but I love that.
Yeah, I thought that was great. How about you, Nick? Any quotes?
Yeah, the writing is always is once again stellar in this.
Top notch.
I had a couple here. One coming once again from Loki, where he's like, "Welcome to the real world. Down there, we're awful to one another to get what we want." So I'm like, wow, yes, and I suppose that's sadly the truth. And then between Mobius and Loki, Mobius goes, "Well," and Loki's like, "Well, what? I know you've got some quip you're dying to say." And Loki's like, "Oh, I don't have a quip. I've got nothing to say to you." And Mobius like, "Oh, come on."
And then he goes into this like, "Well, why does she get more security than I do?"
Yes.
That whole business.
And I think Mobius is kind of happy. He's like, oh, finally I get a quip, because he was just dying for a moment.
I was like, I knew it. I knew it was there. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So what's your rating?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say.
Okay. Well, when it comes to ratings, I'm actually going to give this 9 out of 10 post-apocalyptic events.
Excellent. Well, we are in sync, sir, because I'm also give this 9 out of 10 croakies with glorious purpose.
I love that, because I know how much you are loving Croaky right now.
Croaky,
so.
Yes.
We'll have to get Charles a Croaky t-shirt.
Croaky is the new Baby Yoda. I'm just saying. Trust me on this. It's going to happen.
It's going to be big.
Indoor plumbing. It's going to be big.
Yes. So, folks, watch out for those upcoming Croaky Funkos, T-shirts, and everything else that goes with that. So
I'm just saying it's going to happen. History will prove me right on this one.
Oh, it's a very toyetic character indeed, and you could do everything you want with it. And Fandom Zone news. I didn't have anything particular, Charles. Do you have anything news-wise you wanted to share with our listeners? I didn't.
It's a pretty quiet week, so more time to watch Loki, everybody.
That's right. However, Fandom Zone fan mail. We do have some fan mail today from the ever-devoted and ever-wonderful Holly Mack.
Yay.
So, of course, hey, Holly, thank you as always for writing in. Holly says, hey, Nik and Charles. Hey, Holly.
Hey, Holly.
Where to begin with this episode?
At the beginning?
Lot of things were brought... Yes, exactly. A lot of things were brought up. Love the scene with what I'm thinking was a young Sylvie acting out a story before TVA agents get her. As a kid that age, I would be scared as well. Definitely. I don't think Mobius is that close to either of the Lokis. He's trying to get to the bottom of things like they want, and if a friendship forms later on after things are said and done, so be it. I guess that might be the case, but though Mobius did seem, like you were pointing out, rather hurt.
Yeah, he did. I mean, that could have been a front. That could have been just he playing Loki, just as much of a manipulator of Loki as he is of him. But I get the feeling, he seemed a little hurt by what Loki did.
I agree with you.
It seemed genuine. Maybe it's just the way Owen Wilson performed it, but it felt genuine to me.
It felt genuine to me as well. And Holly continues, the conversation that Mobius had with Loki about the memory planting was something, and also finding out that the TVA agents were also variants with their minds being messed with really makes you wonder who's really pulling the strings. Mm-hmm. I guess we will find out soon enough. We find out the timekeepers Loki and Sylvie face were androids. Is B-15 another variant of Loki?
Ooh, that's a good theory.
It could be, yes. It's like everybody...
You're a Loki. Everybody gets to be a Loki.
I mean, it could be a possibility. I mean, seeing as, folks who've written this show did write Rick and Morty, it could be very much a Rick and Morty moment when it comes to everybody's Loki.
That would be great. That would be fantastic.
It would be. And
I want the Rick Loki now.
Me too. I want the Rick Loki. I do know the Simpsons will be tributing this episode and Loki on a little short on Disney Plus. So folks, keep your eyes peeled for that.
I'm looking forward to that because I don't know if you saw the Star Wars one with Maggie Simpson.
I did.
That was great. That was adorable.
The Force takes a nap or something like that.
Yeah, the Force awakens from its nap. That one. Yeah. It's really cute. I just watched it recently, and I can't wait for the Avengers one. That's going to be hilarious.
Oh, and knowing the Simpsons, that it's going to be great. And of course, Holly concludes, can't wait to see how the last episodes shake out. Is it Wednesday yet? We're asking ourselves that same question.
Yes.
Holly from Wisconsin. Well, Holly, what can I say?
We have 4 days, 4 long days, yes, as we're recording this.
And in the meantime, anything can happen. But yes, thank you so much, as always, for writing in, Holly, and for being so dedicated. And, as Charles has often sung your praises, I also want to sing your praises too, because it's just wonderful. I think just like you say, is it Wednesday yet? One of the great things about doing this is getting emails like yours. It really makes it even more worthwhile. It really is fun.
It does. That's why I encourage everybody to write in, guys. You want to be like Holly.
Exactly. And if you want to be like Holly and share your thoughts about Loki with us, please do so by shooting us an email at fandomzonecast@gmail.com. Once again, fandomzonecast@gmail.com.
Use it.
Feel free to... Exactly. Use it as much as you can, folks. The more stuff we get, the happier we are. So, of course, it is about you fans like us. So we want to know what you think about
We're fans just like you
shows.
guys. So, yeah, we want to hear your theories as well.
Exactly. The more the merrier. And of course, feel free to follow us on social media, Facebook and Twitter. We certainly appreciate your follows and support. And Charles, when it comes to you, when you're not here, giving your wonderful theories and discussing your love for Loki, where can folks find you on the interwebs?
Well, obviously, you can find me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog of all geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Where I talk about all the stuff that we talk about here on the Phantom Zone podcast. So all kinds of comic news, TV news, comic book TV news, and all of my other projects for the Southgate Media Group, including, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast that I do with assorted special guest companions, wonderful special guest companions, like a certain DJ Nik and others, and Holly, and other wonderful people, where we talk Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, Big Finish audios, and more. This past week, we had Christine Peruski, friend of both of ours, as we discussed, we did a commentary for The Eaters of Light from the Peter Capaldi era, which got a little bit drunk stop everywhere because Christine was doing some adult beverages as we did her commentary. No problems there, but it was a very fun discussion. And then coming up here later this week, I'm going to be talking with John Takis, who's going to be returning to Next Stop Everywhere after a little absence. And we're going to be discussing Return of the Cybermen. And not Revenge of the Cybermen from the Tom Baker era. This is Return of the Cybermen, which was an original draft that was written by Cybermen co-creator Jerry Davis. And it stars Tom Baker because Big Finish Audio is adapting this. So we have Tom Baker reprising the Fourth Doctor in this alternate Revenge of the Cybermen. And to make things even more special, we have Sadie Miller, the daughter of Elizabeth Slate, portraying her mother's character, Sarah Jane Smith, in the story. So we have Sarah Jane Smith's real-life daughter, Sadie Miller, playing Sarah Jane Smith. So how great is that, right? So it's going to be a great thing to tune into, and we're going to be discussing this. And I definitely encourage everybody, if you don't already own this audio, you might want to go to bigfinish.com, and you can download it there and then enjoy it with us as we discuss it. I highly recommend it. It's a fun audio, and you got Nicholas Briggs doing the voice of these Tom Baker era Cybermen. So it's just a lot of fun, and I really encourage everybody to check it out. And then come on Next Stop Everywhere and listen to us talk about it.
Exactly.
Yep. And then also Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast, where Zan Sprouse and I finally recorded our 99th episode and wrapped up the hotel room series of 3 episodes from an obscure 1993 HBO series that David Lynch did. And then coming up for our big 100th episode,
Whoop, whoop.
We're going to have a very special guest, aren't we, Nik?
Really? Who is this special guest of whom you speak?
Well, I think it's
Or you don't want to reveal it just yet. I don't know.
We'll go ahead and tease that. So if you're a fan of listening to Nik here on the Phantom Zone, well, you might want to check out Ghostwood's 100th episode, because one of our special guests hosts this time for this 100th episode is going to be none other than DJ Nik. Yay!
Wow!
Yay! So we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk the European version of the original Twin Peaks pilot, and I think that's going to be very interesting. We thought, well, hey, we can watch the European version. We haven't done that. Well, who would be great to watch that with? Why, an actual European. So, Nik, we know how much you're a fan of Ghostwood. We know you love listening to us while you shop. And
yes, while I'm doing my shopping.
Well, you're doing your shopping.
Buy my essentials to stay alive and put food on the table. That's where I get my food. I'm listening to Ghostwood. I am, folks.
So now we're going to give you an opportunity to give something back by coming on and helping us celebrate our 100th episode. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you are as well.
I'm so flattered. I think it's a great tie-in also to the current Euro Cup, which is being played. It's kind of like your Euro Cup moment, if you will, of Ghostwood. So I think it's very, very, nothing. these guys always do stuff by design, folks. Zan and Charles, it's always by design. It's not by chance. Yep. So,
well, we'd like to be very cosmopolitan in our approach. You know, we know we have a lot of listeners around the world, just like we do here on the Phantom Zone. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't always have to be American centric. We like to, we want to bring the entire world, and it's a global community we like to have. So you're going to be a part of that.
I'm super
I can't wait.
To that.
And then, last but certainly not least, Drunk Cinema, that Zan Strauss and I also do as our side gig. We recently discussed the 1987, the original version of RoboCop, which was a lot of fun. And coming up next, Zan and I are going to be discussing for episode 14, we're going to do the movie that put Tim Burton on the map, mm-hmm. Pee-wee's Big Adventure. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Zan and I are both fans of this movie, starring Paul Rubens, of course, as Pee-wee Herman. It's got a lot of great cameos, like...
Is the score by Danny Elfman there as well?
Yeah, this might be the first time that Tim Burton and Danny Elfman actually worked together.
Yeah, because that was then a long-lasting collaboration.
This might be the first of their long-lasting relationship, like you said. So this is before Batman, before Beetlejuice. So it's a pretty notable movie. It's a fun movie. And, like I said, a lot of great cameos. You got Jen Hooks. This was written by Phil Hartman.
Who also of Simpsons fame, of course.
Of Simpsons fame and Saturday Night Live fame, yes, of course. Like the Troy McClure on The Simpsons. Hi, I'm Troy McClure, and you may recognize me from obscure B movie. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and I really encourage everybody to check it out. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope everybody enjoys it.
Well, that's fabulous, fabulous stuff, folks. So definitely check out Charles and the wonderful things he does, because they are indeed wonderful. When it comes to me, if you are fans of country music, you can find me on the Whiskey and Cigarettes show, where we play today's country, traditional country, and everything else in between. More info about that, whiskeyandcigarettesshow.com. Podcast-wise, I do, of course, host Happiness and Darkness, a superhero movie podcast. We discuss all superhero movies under the sun. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the Instagram. And last but certainly not least, Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast, where myself, Zan Sprouse, and Rachel Friend are going through all the Best Picture winners from 1927's Wings to present day. We recently did On the Waterfront, and next week we'll be discussing Marty, starring the wonderful Ernst Borgnine. So that's going to definitely be a fun episode indeed, and a fun discussion of a great movie. And when it comes, of course, to this show, next time on episode 224 of the Fandom Zone, we will, of course, be discussing episode 5 of Loki, so our penultimate episode, and you know it's going to be good. So, Charles, any closing thoughts before we sign off?
Croaky! No.
Croaky!
This was a great episode. We only have 2 more to go, so it's going to be very interesting to see where they go from here, especially now that Ravonna has been revealed as being up to shenanigans. And I can't wait to talk about it with you. I'm like Holly said, is it Wednesday yet? I can't wait to get your thoughts on this, Nick. So do you have any final thoughts?
Well, I am just super excited for this double header. I'm actually going to give my hot take. I'm sure they're going to stick the landing, because it's been a great show thus far. Hopefully then, we'll see Kate Herron doing more other things, and it gives you also a feel for what the Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness will be like, because of course, that Mr. Waldron is behind that movie is this. So I'm really looking forward to this, and can't wait for next week indeed. So that said, folks, we will see you next time with episode 5 of Loki. Until then, keep watching the skies. Ciao, everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.